Right now, as you read this, a voice in your head is narrating it. You didn't invite it. It just started talking the moment you learned to read. That voice comments on your day, it rehearses arguments you'll never have, it talks you through cooking dinner, it replays conversations from years ago. Most people assume this voice is just thinking, that thinking and talking to yourself are the same thing. They're not. Your inner voice isn't a metaphor, it's speech. Real speech your brain builds and never lets out. And the story of why it's there and who it's actually talking to is stranger than you'd expect. To understand it, go back to the 1930s, to a Russian psychologist named Lev Vygotsky. Vygotsky noticed something odd about small children. Toddlers don't think quietly. They narrate everything out loud. I'm putting the block here. Now the red one goes on top. Adults assumed this was just noise. Vygotsky disagreed. He argued this out-loud narration was the child learning to control their own behavior, literally talking themselves through a task. He called it private speech. And he made a prediction that sounded strange at the time. He said private speech doesn't disappear as children grow up. It goes underground. By around age 7, most children stop narrating out loud. But Vygotsky argued the narration didn't stop. It just moved inside. The talking to yourself instinct never left. It just became silent. For decades, this was hard to test. You can't watch a thought happen. Then, in the 2000s, a British psychologist named Charles Fernyhough picked up where Vygotsky left off. Fernyhough used a method called descriptive experience sampling. Volunteers wore a device that beeped randomly throughout the day. The instant it beeped, they wrote down exactly what was happening in their mind. The results confirmed Vygotsky almost exactly. Inner speech wasn't rare. It was constant, threaded through almost every waking hour. But then Fernyhough's data revealed something nobody expected. Not everyone's inner voice sounded the same, and some people didn't have one at all. In 2020, this became public in an unexpected way. A man's article about having no inner monologue went viral, and millions of people learned for the first time that their experience wasn't universal. Some people think in full sentences, word for word like a voice narrating a film. Others think in flashes of meaning with no words attached at all. Researchers now call this range a spectrum, from vivid inner speech to what's sometimes called an endophasia, thinking with no inner voice. Neither version is more correct. They're just different architectures for the same underlying process, which raises the obvious question. If the voice isn't required for thought, what is it actually for? The answer starts inside a brain scanner. When researchers ask people to silently talk to themselves during an fMRI scan, something surprising lights up. Broca's area activates, the same region responsible for producing spoken language out loud. Your brain doesn't treat inner speech as a separate, quieter category of thought. It treats it as speech, nearly identical to talking, minus the final step of moving your mouth. Some studies even detect tiny electrical signals in the muscles of the throat and tongue while people think in words. Your body is trying to speak. It's just being stopped at the very last moment. In other words, the voice in your head isn't a metaphorical narrator. It's leftover machinery from a system built to talk out loud, running one step short of completion. Which brings us to the strangest part of all. If inner speech is real speech your brain almost produces, someone has to be on the receiving end. Speaking implies a listener. And normally your brain solves this problem invisibly. Every time you generate an action, whether it's moving your arm or generating a sentence, your brain creates something called an efference copy. It's a prediction, a heads up sent to the rest of the brain saying, this is coming and it's coming from you. That's why you can't tickle yourself. Your brain predicts the sensation and cancels the surprise. Neuroscientist Chris Frith proposed that inner speech works the same way. Your brain generates the speech, tags it as self-produced, and files it quietly as your own thought. But researchers like Ralph Hoffman at Yale study what happens when the tagging system fails. In some cases of auditory hallucination, the brain still generates inner speech, but the self-tag doesn't attach. The thought arrives exactly like inner speech always does, just without the label marking it as yours. And when that label goes missing, the brain does something remarkable. It assumes the voice must be coming from somewhere else. Not a malfunction of imagination, a misfiled tag on something completely ordinary, the exact same mechanism running in every single one of us every day. So the voice in your head was never really you narrating your life from the outside. It's your own speech system, quietly rehearsing without ever reaching your mouth, tagged moment by moment as belonging to you, so you never notice the process happening at all. Which means the sentence, "I talked myself into it," isn't just a phrase. It's closer to a literal description of what your brain does, dozens of times a day, in a voice built entirely out of speech that never got permission to be spoken. And the only reason it feels like a companion instead of a stranger is a tiny neural signature, attached in milliseconds telling you, this one's yours. Take that tag away, even briefly, and the same voice can start to sound like someone else entirely. So the next time that voice comments on your day or rehearses tomorrow's conversation before it happens, remember what it actually is. Not a mind reading itself, a mouth that never got to move.